Hello and welcome to Views on News. I am Jawad Tehami. As we all know that India currently holds the rotating year-long presidency of the G20, and its authorities have decided to hold certain events of this G20 moot, the leaders meeting of which is going to be held in September in Delhi, in certain disputed territories with Pakistan and China also. Now, when we specifically talk about Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, Indian authorities have decided to hold G20 Tourism Working Group meeting over there. Pakistan's Foreign Office has condemned India's move. Let me quote what the Foreign Office had to say regarding this move by India. India's irresponsible move is the latest in a series of self-serving measures to perpetuate its illegal occupation on Jammu and Kashmir, and India's actions disregard the United Nations Security Council resolutions and are in violation of the United Nations Charter and the international law, unquote. At the same time, we have seen All Parties Hurriyat Conference says the government of Modi is peddling the false propaganda to push its so-called normalcy narrative in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, and it has also reiterated its call for boycott of a G20 summit in Srinagar. We have seen a similar sort of reaction from China also. China skipped a meeting regarding the G20 in Arunachal Pradesh. Also, it has condemned the move by Indian authorities vis-a-vis Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, and it has also said that this is only going to complicate the situation. We have also seen in the so-called renovation of Srinagar, where this particular moot is going to be taking place, the authorities have demolished the clock tower, and it has also been criticized by the Kashmiri leader and activists. We'll try to understand what this particular move actually is aimed at, and what happens to be the responsibility of international community, especially the members of the G20, after the atrocities which have been committed by Indian authorities and its forces in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, especially after the revocation of Article 370. We are honored to have been joined in the studio by Dr. Owais bin Wasi, his Kashmiri leader. Dr. Wasi, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on Views on News tonight. We really appreciate that. On Skype, we are joined by Brigadier retired Haris Nawaz. He is senior analyst. Brigadier Nawaz, thank you very much for your time, also for being with us on Views on News tonight. We really appreciate that. Let me begin the discussion with you, Dr. Wasi. Ever since the revocation of Article 370, we have seen the situation in occupied valley had been worsening. What is the ground situation right now as we speak over there in the valley?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. The ground situation in Jammu and Kashmir is unfortunately very grim and very bleak. And since 5th of August 2019, it started. And for 18 consecutive months, there was a complete internet and communication blackout and shutdown. And after that, there were also, shutdown, but that was partial shutdown in different places of Jammu and Kashmir. The situation of media is so grave that journalists, they are being arrested. Human rights defenders, they are being arrested under UAPA and under different laws. And recently, in the recent past, some media organizations, they were also, by NIA raided, and some journalist houses, they were also raided. And so the situation is very, unfortunately, very bleak and very grim.
At that very time, we heard there were certain leaders from the opposition at that time, especially when we talk about Mr. Ghulam Nabi Azad. He visited personally IIOJK at that time after the revocation of Article 370, and he said it was the reign of terror in the valley. So the situation has worsened over time after that particular revocation?
Exactly. You know, the APHC leadership, they are already behind the ball. But apart from these leaders, the pro-India leadership, National Conference, PDP and Congress, they are either house arrested or behind bars, or they have certain restrictions. So that is why Farooq Abdullah, former Chief Minister, he termed that situation that this is a kind of volcano which could be erupted at any point of time. So with this statement of former Chief Minister Dr. Farooq Abdullah, you can understand the gravity of the situation in Srinagar.
Right. Let me bring in Brigadier Nawaz also into the discussion. Brigadier Nawaz, as India has planned to hold a G20 moot regarding tourism in Srinagar, in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, but as you would definitely have heard Dr. Wasi saying, the situation over there in IIOJK ever since the revocation of Article 370 has even worse with every single passing day. Do you think by holding such events or in which the members of the international community are expected to participate, India can divert the international community's attention from its gross human rights violations over there in IIOJK?
Situation in IIOJK, that is very clear. Who doesn't know that it is a United Nations Chartered resolution? It's a clear violation. United Nations Military Observer Group is already posted over there. So don't allow them to go ahead of Srinagar, but in Pakistan they can go anywhere. Then of course, most important thing is that after this, they have really occupied each and every place with the military. On every 9 to 10 people, there is a one soldier guarding innocent, unarmed civilians, Kashmiri women, old children. Then, of course, the most important thing is, with this all happening, they have destroyed their all properties. They have finished their business. They have razed to ground their all fruit orchards. The youth is in jail, political leadership in jail. What are they going to convey? They want to tell the world that everything is normal. People are very happy. Kashmiri that has no problem. But actually, I personally feel everybody knows what Indians are doing in Kashmir. But the only thing is they're turning their eyes to the other side. It's a big country. They have their business interests. Then where are the international amnesty commissions, human rights organizations, United Nations? I think it's a big slap on the United Nations face that what all India is doing. They have been saying either it's a bilateral issue or it's the international issue. So everything is finished. They revoked 3370, they revoked 35A, and they have brought their all Hindu population. They're changing the demography of that area. So what are they trying to convey? I think everybody should be closing their eyes. Otherwise, whole world knows what is happening in Kashmir. The voice of Kashmir is all over the world. The only thing is, I think it's a very good thing that Pakistan and China, they are openly protesting. But I think now is the time Pakistan and China should go to the United Nations. China has a veto power and resolve this issue. Otherwise, this will keep happening, and Indians are being encouraged. When the world community G20 is coming over there, that means they are recognizing what India is doing. So I think that situation we should understand and realize, and somebody has to stand about Pakistan, other countries, particularly Islamic countries, and that is how we will be able to tell the world that Kashmir remains a disputed territory on the Charter of the United Nations and all over the world.
Brigadier Nawaz, what happens to be the responsibility of the participating members of the G20? As you already mentioned, that the entire world knows about the atrocities and the brutalities which are being committed by and are being committed continuously by the Indian authorities and its forces in IIOJK. Shouldn't these member countries of the G20 be raising objections to such atrocities of Indian authorities in IIOJK before participating in such a high-level moot?
I thought if they had the moral courage, they should have refused to come and attend in Kashmir. They said, we are ready to come to the India, but not Indian held Kashmir. Illegally, Indian occupied and held Kashmir. That is very, very unfair. The point is, if they can see a human rights organization in Afghanistan, they can see the women are being, they are under a lot of stress, their human rights violations are there. They talk about openly. Why don't talk about Kashmir? When they are coming to Kashmir, all big powers mean they have accepted this part of Kashmir as their property, their legally occupied area. So I think that is very unfair. For this, the matter must go to the United Nations. After this holding a conference or before holding the conference, now is again a time. Pakistan should go to OIC. That is the main platform. There, if we are able to convince the Islamic world, then from there the resolution should go to the United Nations. the way Islamophobia issue was settled over there. But for that, we need to stand. We need to have very strong political government, Foreign Office, even I would say Interior Ministry. They have to work out in detail the complete paper, and then we should go. Other way, and we have, and all over the world, we have a lot of Kashmiris in United Nations, United Kingdom. It is their unfinished agenda. So they have to come forward. They have to go and protest in New York against the United Nations. That is the thing we have to do it. We have to use all diplomatic channels, all means available to at least tell the world it is very unfair. It is being noticed by the whole Islamic world. That is what we have to do. What all is possible with us, we should do it. And of course, diplomatically and also through international media.
Right. Brigadier Nawaz, please stay with us. Let me go back to Dr. Wasi. Dr. Wasi, what about the responsibility of the G20 members who are expected to attend this high-level moot over there in IIOJK? Shouldn't they be raising objections before attending this particular moot that, look, you are doing this, and these atrocities and brutalities are not going to be tolerated. Until you don't curb these things, our delegations or the leaders are not going to attend such a moot.
Yes, you're right that ideally...
Is it something difficult to be delivered to Indian authorities?
In fact, ideally the G20 countries should not have participated or should not have made commitment to participate in the upcoming G20 meeting, which is scheduled to be held in May. But in this global politics, the morality is the big casualty, and they could not uphold the principle of morality, and they are participating it. But India, in fact, tries to use its presidency to advance its political objectives, geopolitical objectives, regional objectives, and international objectives. And G20 countries perhaps should have understood India's machinations, India's stratagems, and India's sinister designs.
The international community has understood these machinations, so why not any sort of a concrete action against the Indian authorities or those entities or those people who are involved in persecuting the Indian illegally occupied Kashmiris?
This is unfortunately double standards at international level that we are observing when it comes to the issue of Kashmir, when it comes to the issue of Palestine, when it comes to the issue of Muslims within India or across the world. So we see this discriminatory treatment by international organizations and international community. This is unfortunate, but at this point of time, when India is going to hold that some sessions in Srinagar, I think that we need to reach out to the G20 countries, to the United Nations Security Council, United Nations General Assembly, SCO, SAARC, and other fora to apprise the sensitive environment in this, in this region, and the ramifications and implications which this summit might have. When this issue is on the table of United Nations Security Council on India-Pakistan question, and it was recently tabled after 5th August 2019. And when there are 11 United Nations security resolutions and one resolution 38, which I previously in our program I referred, that 38 in para 2 clearly mentions that no side can unilaterally alter the material condition of that. So if such things are clearly mentioned by the international organizations, reputable organizations, and not about the international organization, EU, European Union, is the member of G20, and in 2021 and 2022, 16 European parliamentarians, they wrote a letter to the Commission about the human rights situation in Jammu and Kashmir. So they are part of that. Saudi Arabia is part of G20, Turkey is part of G20, China is part of G20, and these are the countries I think that they should play some role to apprise the other member states about the sensitivity, because this is the conflict in which there are stakes of three military powers: China, India, and Pakistan. So taking this thing, without keeping in view these nuclear dimension or these strategic considerations, I think this could be quite dangerous for the future.
Right, Brigadier Nawaz, you already mentioned that OIC, the group of Islamic countries, should also play a proactive role in this particular regard, taking this particular issue, which has been internationally recognized as disputed, is on the UN agenda for 7 decades. We recently saw a couple of months before OIC's Secretary General visited the areas along the line of control and the working boundary, and he also said that the entire world should know about the Indian atrocities and the brutalities and the kind of things they've been doing to people over there on the other side of the border, as well as because of their cross-border fighting to the people, the kind of damages and injuries they accrued. So what else we expect from the OIC to do in this regard, because there is also a particular contact group on Kashmir that has released multiple reports highlighting this particular issue?
You see, the most important thing is that at least Pakistan strong delegation comprising good senators with good communication skills, they should have gone to OIC or our Islamic countries. They should have convinced them what is going to happen, what are the legal implications. And then a strong resolution condemning the holding of this G20 conference in Kashmir. They should have opposed this. Openly they should pass a resolution. That would have conveyed definitely a different message, apart saying that the atrocity, we condemn it, it should not happen. But opposing holding this conference in Jammu and Kashmir, that should have been the resolution coming from these countries. And also, Foreign Office should have organized senators with good communication going to all G20 countries. They should have told them what are the implications, what are the reasons, what is happening over there, what do we think there, what are the resolutions of the United Nations over there, what India is doing atrocities with all facts and figures. That could have restrained them at coming and attending this conference. Rather, they would have said, please hold in India, but not in Kashmir. So these are the factual things we should have taken up. That is very, very important. And for that, we are committed to stand with the people of Jammu and Kashmir. We are the voice of Jammu and Kashmir. When they die, they bury their bodies with Pakistan flag on. That shows the love for Pakistan. So we have to give strength to the Kashmiris. No, we are with you. We are not living at this time of difficult time. That is what has to be. And then Indians are doing another very important thing. You see, you realize 7 constituency seats are being increased in Jammu-dominated, Hindu-dominated areas of Kashmir. So after some time when they hold election, they are going to have their Indian chief minister. And that is the point of concern for all the Kashmiris and Pakistanis, and I would say even all of the Islamic world. That is a very serious thing they're coming. They are being really oppressed and suppressed so that their businesses are gone. They have got nothing to do. What will they do? They will have to submit. That is what Indians want, and they want to convey to the world. See, we are holding conference here. Everything is comfortable. Kashmiris are very happy, and they have welcomed us. They are welcoming to the whole world. G20 people who are coming with. That is the purpose of holding this conference, and that is what I am saying. It is incumbent on Pakistan government to take more bold and clear stand on this issue, because otherwise we will keep losing our claim on this illegally Indian occupied Jammu and Kashmir, and that is not a good thing for us. We have to have think on these issues.
Right, Dr. Wasi, ever since the revocation of Article 370, we had heard the claims by Indian authorities for the development of the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, and also ensuring the security over there in the valley. Now, does it actually serve the purpose of the people over there by holding such events over there? Even if we look from the perspective of Indian side, it only is, I think, aimed to garner that profit by using the resources from Kashmir. Isn't it so?
You know, as far as these 3 years development is concerned, I think the better picture has been portrayed by a book recently published, written by Anuradha Bhasin. And she is a very courageous journalist and editor of Kashmir Times based in Jammu. And she, in fact, mapped the whole developments after a revocation of Article 35A and 370. And by reading that book by a Kashmiri writer, Kashmiri journalist, you can understand what kind of development is taking place over there. So that is just an attempt to hoodwink the international community. And this summit is being held to basically to tell the world that there is everything is fine, so and there is normalcy.
Okay, let's suppose if you tell the world, the G20 community, look, everything is very normal over here in IIOJK. But on the contrary, the situation doesn't happen to be that way, because if you continuously suppress a certain population, of course, it's going to garner reaction. And the kind of indigenous movement that has been going on over there in IIOJK for so many years.
I think the current situation that ought to be depicted is that 900,000 military and paramilitary forces, they are deployed over there, right? The second thing is that 100,000 people have been died. Hundreds of thousands of people have been injured. 10,000 people have been disappeared. 10,000 women and mothers, they have become half widows and they have become half mothers. This is a unique phenomenon in Kashmir, half mother and half widow. So such kind of massive, and there are recent in the recent past 2,000 unmasked graves which are there. And I think, and I just would like to quote a recent report by Amnesty International, and the title is "We Are Being Punished by the Law." And Akar Patel, he writes that for 3 years now, civil society and media in Jammu and Kashmir have been subjected to a vicious crackdown by the Indian government, which is determined to stifle dissent. So by this report of Amnesty International recently published, you can understand the ground situation over there. And G20 members, instead of holding these sessions, they should visit the martyrs' graveyard.
Right.
And they should ask their kith and kin that why these people have been killed. They should go to the places where massacres took place, Bij Bada massacre, Gau Kadal massacre, Sopur massacres. So they must visit the village of Kunanposhpura, where almost 80 women, from age 13 to 80, they have been molested by Indian security forces. So I think these are the places they should visit. And when they go to the Srinagar universities, and some of the professors, they were compelled to join armed struggle. So they should ask that what compelled them to join leave this academia and join armed struggle. So I think that these are the things, if they visit to these areas, they can themselves understand what is the situation.
What is actually the situation over there in IIOJK? We're joined by another participant in the show on the phone line by Ms. Naela Chohan. She is former ambassador. Ms. Naela, thank you very much for taking time out for Views on News tonight. We really appreciate that. As Dr. Wasi is saying that there's so many atrocities, the situation in IIOJK has worsened ever the revocation of Article 35A and 370, when India unilaterally snatched the autonomy of this particular region. So much has worsened ever since then. What makes the international community, especially when we talk about the members of the G20, have that sort of a trust and confidence in what the Indian authorities are trying to propagate, a false propaganda to push that narrative of normalcy over there in IIOJK?
Well, thank you so much for inviting me to your program. It's always a pleasure to be with you, Mr. Jawad. This is a very important question. How does the G20, because G20 is a large group, it has EU members, it has Turkey in it, it has China in it, it has Saudi Arabia, Pakistan is not part of it. So not being part of it gives us that limitation. However, we have been since last year emphasizing, because we could see the writing on the wall, that India is using deceptive ways to mislead the international community. Now, this plan to have Youth 20 and Tourism Working Group in Srinagar is basically an eyewash for the world. And as yet, they have just issued their calendar. We really don't know what is the reaction of the G20 members. China has expressed its disapproval to it. We have told the international community about the violation of the international norms, violation of the UN Charter, violation of UN Security Council resolutions. And India, if it has that grandiose ambitions for itself, it cannot afford to do such practices. However, let's see how it plays out.
Naela, what does the international law or any sort of a mechanism regarding this particular moot to be held in a disputed territory that is internationally recognized as such and which is on the UN agenda for such a long time? What does the international law or the norms say about holding of such a moot there in a disputed territory?
The international norm is not to have such international conferences in disputed territories. It is not acceptable. However, India trying to play its role as a leader is trying to mislead the international community. I don't think they can get away with it, but let's see. They are getting, China has already given its position on the matter. Turkey and Saudi Arabia also are considering how to react to this invitation. There are other countries also that are looking at it. So if it fails, then it will be an embarrassment for India itself. And I hope that it does. But at this moment, it's premature because at this moment they have just declared their schedule of activities. Let's see how the reactions come.
Right, Ms. Naela Chohan joining us on the phone line from Ambassador. Thank you very much for joining in at Views on News tonight. We really appreciate that. Brigadier Nawaz, when we talk about this particular moot, now there is a call by the APHC to the United Nations Secretary General to appoint a special representative for a viable solution to this particular dispute. Do you think any sort of specific role of the good offices of the United Nations Secretary General can play in the immediate terms regarding this dispute?
Of United Nations Secretary for that resolution. And who went there? Jawaharlal Nehru went over there, kept begging, ran over there and kept begging that please save Pakistanis are coming and they're going to cooperate at Kashmir. So how can they deny it? I am surprised they have gone for Kashmir resolution. They accepted the plebiscite, and with how they can say that it's a part of Indian territory, it is surprising. They have no justification. The world is happening because the world needs India as Americans need India as a proxy against Pakistan, not to operationalize CPEC and create destabilization of Pakistan. Then, of course, China, what is happening in Ladakh area, we all know. And then South China Sea.
Pardon for the interruption. As you already mentioned, that it's surprising that when the forefathers of Indians went to the United Nations with this dispute themselves, we have recently seen that the top officials, including the Home Minister of India, Amit Shah, also openly and categorically castigating and criticizing that very decision of Jawaharlal Nehru to go to the United Nations with this particular matter. So that clearly shows that they don't trust their forefathers for whatever the decisions they also made.
Whatever happened, but now it is on the court of United Nations resolution. It's there. There's no doubt about it. And whatever, because the problem is now India is in the control of RSS. And in that there are 5 top leadership. And they are the really, I would say, they are taking India to a difficult situation. This is Ajit Jawad, Narendra Modi, Amit Shah, and of course Rajnath Singh. Now they are the people who are doing everything, and they are creating hue and cry, they are creating harassment, not only in Kashmir, they are doing in India also with Muslims. They get their vote whenever the elections are coming. Then they go play their Muslim cards, and they go for Kashmir, they go for surgical sites and whatever they want to go, and then the winner beats vote bank over there. So that is the reason. So I would say that Pakistan immediately should contact at least Turkey and Saudi Arabia. They are the Muslim countries. Tell them our reservations. What are the facts there it's going to create, and it's going to seriously affect the cause of Kashmir. That we have to tell them, and also go to these other 20 other remaining countries. Tell them the problem with Indian propaganda is on top. You know, EU lab information, how they've created different websites, how they pollute the mind of the world, and they create pollution against Pakistan. That Pakistan is doing terrorism in Kashmir. Pakistan is creating a lot of problem in India. We carry out certain terrorist act in India. That is the problem. It otherwise, rather it's the other way around. So that is the problem we face always. It that India is doing terrorism in Pakistan. Gulbhar Singh Yadav was arrested, big catch, and now Gulzar Imam Shambe, who has fought and he has said everything what India is supporting them, but they are not pushed about it because the world community is with them. So that is what I say. We have to go for diplomatic offensive now. Our ambassadors all over the world, particularly where Kashmiri strength is more, we have to exploit their situation. And United Nations, I think, in front of them, that is the day we should have a lot of protest over there and tell them, remind to the world and United Nations what are their responsibility to resolve this outstanding issue since 1948. That we need to do it. And that is what, and that's why you must have heard BBC report what all they spoke about India, what is they doing in Kashmir. They're blinding people, children, women with the pellet guns, and then they were very unhappy against BBC, and I think, they create a lot of problem for them in India, their representatives. So the India is a big power. It's a big industrial power, and people need them. But still, there are international norms, there are human rights responsibilities that we can't shed away. That we have to keep reminding to the world and the international communities that what is the obligation towards this atrocities, what is happening in Kashmir and same with Palestine. I think with these two only issues are resolved in the world, most of the peace is going to be achieved in the world. And but I think the words they don't want to achieve peace in the world. Because then the more there are conflicts, the more they sell their war machine, the more they earn their money. And that is what is happening all over the world.
Brigadier Nawaz, as you already mentioned that India is a huge industrial power and the world needs them for the economic interests. So at the cost of what? No matter how much they flout the international law, the resolutions by the Security Council regarding any certain dispute, and there is no human dignity in a certain occupied territory by the whim of force. They have done it for so many decades. So it comes at the cost of human dignity, and that shows the conscience of the international community. There happens to be a huge question mark onto that.
India is a rogue state. Who doesn't know what is Narendra Modi? Murder of Muslims in Gujarat. What all he is doing in India. He is a ruthless individual, and that is why he is ruling it. And they are not worried about it because they get the international support. It is a big responsibility of the international community. Something happened in all over the world. They talk about human rights. They talk about so many other things. There is European Union and the United Nations, United States of America. Nobody is doing anything. I would say even in a Muslim world, their response is very lukewarm. They have to be very active in these two issues, Palestine and Kashmir. Unless we show strength as a Muslim countries, we cannot dictate or we cannot convince about what is going to happen. We have a lot of resources, we have a lot of money, we can twist the arm of a lot of through our business and oil, but nothing is going to happen. That is the problem. Why can't we have a Muslim NATO type of Muslim organizations where we have Islamic Bank, we have hardwares, weapon ammunition industry, then we can develop and show our strength. Not to have conflict, but when you're strong, you buy your strength with your arms, muscle twisting, and also with your lot of education, everything, you can dictate your term. You have to be strong to talk to the world and look into the eyes of others. Why Pakistan is not being allowed to economically prosper? Why we are not allowed to have CPEC completed in a given time? Why we are having a trouble in Balochistan? There are reasons. Because we are an Islamic country, we are a nuclear country, and we have a very standing army. If we do economic prosperity, we are going to take the scene in a national interest, and that is what the world doesn't want. Let's be very frank in telling you all this. So these are the factors. We are to be blamed, and we have to look into it now how we have to overcome all these weaknesses.
Right, Dr. Wasi, when we talk about the responsibility of the Kashmiri diaspora who are settled around the world, what happens to be their responsibility in highlighting this particular issue, the gross human rights violations which are being committed continuously by Indian authorities and its forces over there in IIOJK with impunity? We have seen the example of Khalistan movement. They had been holding a referendum in various parts of the world, in major capitals of the world. Is there any sort of action that could be done by the Kashmiri diaspora all over the world also to impress upon the international community, look, this is our right and we are vying for the self-determination, and that should be ensured as per the UN Charter by the international community and the major powers?
Yes, you're right that there are a lot of Kashmiri diaspora settled in Europe and different parts of the world. I think that they should play a very important role in this respect, that they are the indigenous people. They are the people who have the agency to advocate their own cause on indigenous ground. In order to do that, what they have to project is that the legal and the moral vantage point or the standing that we have on Kashmir, I think they should project to the international community through different forums and in different universities.
So what about
they have to
holding
engage.
a referendum of that sort? The Six for Justice is holding around the world in the major capitals.
Such measures could be taken, but I think in order to have a sustained campaign, such kind of discourse should be generated and disseminated so that international community should be apprised, should be sensitized about that, because ultimately the referendum that is supposed to be held, that is supposed to be held in Jammu and Kashmir, not in other parts of the world. So the point here is that we must sensitize the international community. They push their governments.
Have a huge symbolic significance of holding referendums in various parts of the world. Of course, it has to happen within the territory.
It could be done, but I think the better approach is, but technically there is a difference between a referendum and plebiscite. What we are asking is, that is the plebiscite, UN mandated plebiscite, that is going to be held in state of Jammu and Kashmir. What we have to do, Jammu and Kashmiri diaspora, I think they should persuade with their argument, with their discourse, that this is the issue that needs to be resolved, and that is the territory which is surrounded by 3 international community. So it's very sensitive, and people are being oppressed, people are being persecuted, and as I have just shared the report, that black laws, for example, Armed Forces Special Power Act, UAPA, PSA, such kind of massive human rights violations are taking place in this region, and those people in the West and the countries and the organizations which are sensitive to human rights, which are sensitive to the rights of the people, I think they must be properly apprised, they must be acquainted about the situation in ground, so that they can push their governments, that they can play their role to push India to resolve this issue of Jammu and Kashmir.
What's the story behind this particular demolishing the old structure of the clock tower at the Lal Chowk in Srinagar? What's the significance?
Lal Tower is the symbol of freedom. In fact, it's the whole freedom movement, especially after 1989. People and they would gather over there, and they would hold rallies and processions against Indian hegemony, Indian domination. So it has a very important significance, and it's a symbol of freedom, it's a symbol of resistance. So
how do Kashmiris see demolishing its old structure?
This move is not taking well, though India tries to justify it, but they are not talking well, because what they are, in fact, Indians, they are trying to do is that they try to dismantle every identity mark, whether it is a kind of building or it's a language, it's a structure, it's any other thing. So in fact, India tries to dismantle the identity marks, and this is one of the important identity marks for the Kashmiris, this red square that you are talking about. So
there are multiple reports that Pakistani flag has been raised a number of times over there.
Yes, Pakistani flag has been raised, and whenever such processions took place in that area, Pakistani flag and pro-Pakistani organizations, people, they would gather and they would hold rallies and protest demonstrations. So it's a very important symbol of resistance, a symbol of freedom, symbol of mass resistance of the people of Jammu and Kashmir.
Right, Brigadier Nawaz, your quick take regarding this idea for the Kashmiri diaspora of holding a referendum of the sort of referendums the Sikhs for Justice, the Khalistan movement is holding around the world in the major capitals of the world. Don't you think it can have that very huge symbolic significance as far as demanding the right of self-determination for the Kashmiris is concerned?
It's very important. It is one of the way forward. I think the whole of Kashmir or the world, this Kashmir diaspora, along with even Sikh, they should join hands together. Both communities should join hands together, and then they should raise their voice. Sikhs coming for a referendum and Kashmiri coming for a referendum, and Kashmiris are all over the world, and they are doing very good. But then they have very good authoritative places also. So they have to show their stand, tell the world that what is happening. First, we have to make the world realize what is happening and what atrocities are being happening in Kashmir. That is more important. Along with the referendum, if that happens, I think the world mood might change, and they realize now is the time to enforce United Nations resolution of plebiscite. And then very near future, we see that is happening in Kashmir. But so far, things are very, very bad. And I think this is the time Kashmiris and Pakistan and Muslim world have to stand in their support. Only then it might be possible. Otherwise, it will be very difficult.
Right, Brigadier Retired Haris Nawaz, Senior Analyst, joining us on the Skype. Thank you very much for being with us on Views on News tonight. We really appreciate your time. And we were joined in the studio by Dr. Owais, bin Wasi, Kashmiri leader. Dr. Wasi, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on Views on News tonight. We really appreciate that. And I'll conclude this episode with what the All Parties Hurriyat Conference in Kashmir has said, that the G20 nations should not forget that India is committing serious crimes against humanity in Kashmir, and its summit will not only undermine the UN credibility but will also raise questions over the group's adherence to democratic credentials. With that note, we come to the end of today's show. Till the next one, take good care of yourselves.